All right, so recording is turned on. I'm going to go ahead and share my slide. Second. Are y'all able to see this slide?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, today's topic is going to be about Application Gateway Ingress Controller for AKS. My name is Prithvi Reddy. I'm a Cloud Solutions Architect here in the Dallas area. Normally Naveed runs these sessions. Today I'll be covering Azure Application Gateway. So just a quick overview of what Azure Application Gateway is with Web Application Firewall. So Azure Application Gateway is a layer 7 load balancer. So as you see in the middle here, and it has built-in web application firewall. But it's also referred to as a WAF. So it'll filter for any malicious attacks to your website, any cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. It'll prevent those. So if this is really great for external-facing apps where there's a potential for DDoS attacks and things like that. But the main benefit, of course, is the URL-based routing. So you can have a URL such as images, /images, and then that points to a backend pool, right? And that backend pool can be VMs, it can be containers. The other benefit, of course, you get cookie-based affinity, you get SSL termination. So essentially, you can store your certificates in Key Vault, and the application gateway can read those certificates and authenticate those users with SSL, so you get end-to-end encryption. And this is great for public traffic, but it's also good for private traffic, right? You may have a website that's only being accessed from on-prem, so it really supports public, private, and hybrid scenarios. So that's just a quick overview of what Application Gateway is. And we've had Application Gateway as a product for many years now. But today, what we're going to talk about is it's a new feature it's in public preview. It allows you to use Application Gateway as an ingress controller for your Kubernetes cluster. So up until now, you guys probably familiar with Ingress Controller was a Azure load balancer within Kubernetes. Whereas now with the App Gateway Ingress Controller, the ingress resource is defined as a YAML file. And so there's an ingress resource, that's what this represents right here. It's deployed with a YAML file within your Kubernetes cluster. In addition to that, the App Gateway Ingress Controller, which this represents here, it runs as a pod. So this green icon right here represents a pod inside your Kubernetes cluster. And it configures this application gateway so that the ingress traffic, all these black arrows right here, can route to the individual pods within your Kubernetes cluster. Now, the difference between this and the traditional ingress controller is with App Gateway, each of these it can access the pods directly, the pod IPs. This uses Kubernetes' advanced networking, which is referred to as CNI in AKS. So by doing this, by App Gateway being able to directly access the pod IP, it reduces your network latency by up to 50%, whereas before when compared to the in-cluster ingress controller. The other benefit is that now that you have this App Gateway, you can share this app gateway with other resources such as VMs or app service. So whereas before, when you had the load balancer approach, it was dedicated to that AKS cluster, it couldn't be shared. But with App Gateway now, this resource can be used not just for your Kubernetes pods, but it can be used for VMs and app service as well. Any questions so far? Is all this making sense?
Didn't it used to be that the App Gateway had to be in its own subnet when it was originally released? Is that still the case, or is it now as it's defined in YAML, it's inside the cluster. That's no longer the case?
It does still need its own subnet within the AKS cluster because, to your point, the App Gateway has auto-scaling features built into it. So it scales up. So basically it needs a reserved IP range so that it can scale up and down based on the load that's coming into the application gateway. So that requirement is still there. So it still needs its own subnet, but that subnet will be basically could be a subnet within your AKS VNet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so good question there. Yeah, because the reason without a dedicated subnet, it wouldn't have a pool of IPs to scale up and down, and that's really why that requirement is there. I missed one piece of here. I mentioned this earlier. Typically in your architectures, you're going to have a key vault, and the key vault is where you store your SSL certificates, and the certificates are downloaded and used by your app gateway for end-to-end SSL termination. So that's another benefit now that you get with this App Gateway Ingress Controller. Just to recap what we've talked about in the previous slide, the old way, which is here on the left-hand side, was an in-cluster ingress controller. So you used to it would deploy a software-based load balancer, and you would the biggest drawback with that was when you used an ingress controller, it would actually deploy pods within the Kubernetes cluster. And so it's actually competing for resources with your applications, right? So the benefit here with App Gateway is the App Gateway resource that gets deployed with the App Gateway Ingress Controller is an actual Azure resource, and it's not a pod that's deployed within your cluster. So, and then whereas this is KubeNet, this is using the advanced network. So this is the App Gateway is able to directly access through the pod's IP, whereas before you had to go through the Ingress controller to get to the pod, which introduced a latency and an extra hop. Is this clear for everyone? The differences between the original approach and this approach? Okay. Yeah, and just to visually describe a process flow with App Gateway. So within App Gateway, we have front-end config, which is your public IP, and that front-end config can have multiple endpoints defined. So typical in large-scale enterprise deployments, you'll have what's called blue-green. So you'll have a blue pod, which could represent your production, and a green pod that represents, or green pool, which is a pool of VMs, but same concept applies for containers. And you would test all your stuff in, let's say green is your staging environment, and you have your app gateway pointing to a URL like /staging. You can do this testing in parallel, and then this is pointing to /prod. And then the night of the cutover, you would basically do a flip. So you update your front-end configs. So this is all URL-based routing. So you could say, okay, now change staging to the blue cell and change prod to the green cell, right? So it allows you to test all week rather than having to wait till release night and then doing a big bang change. And then if something goes wrong, you have to you have to roll back, and it's very painful, right? So basically what App Gateway allows you to do is set up 2 parallel environments, test during the week, and then on let's say you have a weekend cutover, you can just cut over seamlessly. So just adding on to that concept of blue-green. So this is how it all comes together with Azure pipelines. So we have our app gateway here. We have our blue cell and we have our green cell running inside of AKS. So I'll just walk through this step by step. So you as a developer, step 1, you're going to check in your code using Helm or Terraform into your source control. I just use GitHub as an example here, but I'm sure you have whatever source control you have there. Step 2, you're going to use JavaScript or Helm to build your containers, right? And you can use Azure pipelines to do that. Step 3, once you've created your containers using Docker, you can push those container images over to your container registry. That's step 3. And once you have your images in your registry, step 4, you're going to configure all your secrets and certificates in Azure Key Vault. So that's over here, step 4. Step 5 is now you have your images, you've got your secrets. So usually when you have to deploy Helm charts, you have to pull your secrets from Key Vault. And then the Azure pipeline will essentially deploy the Helm chart to green. So let's say green is your production environment, right? So that's step 5. So step 6 is there's what we call a canary deployment process. So this sets green to the canary, which is where you're doing all your testing. And then in step 7, this is the key part. I explained this in the previous slide. In your app gateway, we're going to create a URL called /canary. So canary, you've heard the term canary in the coal mine. Wherever you do your initial testing is your canary. So we're going to point the /canary path to the green cell, right? So that's what we're doing in step 7. And then in step 8, from an end user perspective, they're going to be able to see the path to so we test in green, then we're going to promote green. We're going to promote the canary to blue. So now the user will be able to see blue as production. And then give me 1 second. I missed sorry, I missed a step here. But anyway,
8 and 9 seem reversed, right? It just seems like 8 and 9 might be reversed.
Yeah, 8 and 9 are reversed. Basically, yeah. So user will see blue, and then you can promote the canary, and then if you need to flip it, you can flip it to green. But does this make sense? Is this the benefits of App Gateway? So I won't bore you guys with too much PowerPoint. There is actually a GitHub page that actually walks through all of this that I just went through. So you can go through this on your own. I'll paste this in the chat. So you can go play with this.
That'd be great, thank you.
But let me just show you how this looks like in Azure Portal. So I created just a quick demo environment of all those components. So I have a resource group, just my initials 415. So these are basically typical components that you would deploy within, and that link that I sent you will walk you through the steps to set all this up. So it sets up your Key Vault, your VNet, your log analytics workspace, your Kubernetes cluster, and all of that. So definitely go through that demo. I'll just show a very simple example here. Close this out. I'm going to do a kubectl, get pods. Need to make sure that I'm set. 1 second. So we'll go through this from scratch. I had a previous environment, but looks like I might have deleted. Sorry, my apologies. But anyway, these are the very simple AZ commands you can run, so that you have to register the Application Ingress add-on because it is in preview. Then you basically can create your resource group. And then when you're creating your AKS cluster, you basically are going to run this network plugin, which is going to install the application gateway. Then once you've done that, you're going to actually go out and do an AKS get credentials. So I've already created this cluster, so I'm going to go get my credentials. So once you've set your credentials, you're able to run this kubectl command, which does a kubectl get ingress. So I've deployed a very simple .NET app, ASP.net.app, and it has a public IP address of 52.177.29.69. So I can just open up my browser and I can hit that website. So this traffic is going through App Gateway. And just a quick recap, if we run a kubectl get pods here, the only thing that you see here on the get pods is the .NET app. You don't see any pods for Ingress Controller or things like that. A lot of you might be familiar with the original Nginx Ingress Controller. When you deployed that, it actually took up resources on your Kubernetes cluster, right? And in addition to that, because everything had to go through that Ingress Controller pod, it was adding an extra hop. Whereas now, we're hitting this ASP.NET app directly. Any questions there? I know it's a little bit of a recap of what we covered earlier, but now when we run get pods, you don't even see the application gateway within the Kubernetes cluster. So let me show you one more thing here in the portal. So this is my resource group. This is my cluster.
Excuse me, real quick. And that app gateway can have a WAF too, right? Because the app
correct.
Okay. Good.
Yep, the app gateway can have a WAF too. So let me just show you what the app gateway looks like in the portal. So all of the Kubernetes resources go into something called an MC resource group. So this is the MC resource group. And when you create the cluster with that AIGC add-on, it creates an application gateway right here. This is my application gateway. And just a quick recap of what we covered earlier. A good question that just came up about web application firewall. There it is. You can configure your web application firewall, either standard v2 or the WAF v2. This is great so that you don't get the cross-scripting attacks or SQL injection type things. So it's integrated right there. And then just a quick recap on the front-end IP configurations. So here's my public IP, which is the app gateway front-end IP. And then within that, so that's configured there. And then the back-end pools are configured here. So the back-end pool is the container that we deployed, the 10.40.0.45. So the cool thing about App Gateway which is a big benefit over a load balancer, which you've probably been using up until now, because that was the only option on AKS, is that with the load balancer, you had to use either a virtual machine. You had to use a specific backend within which in our case was a pod. Whereas here with a app gateway, you can have any IP address as your backend target. So it doesn't have to be an Azure resource. Whereas with load balancer, you were limited to things like virtual machines and Azure resources. With app gateway, you can use any IP address. Then of course you can configure your health probes. So in this case, I just have a health probe to the root of my website, my ASP.NET web app. And it's basically, of course, it's not good practice to use HTTP. If I had built out this demo completely, we would have put a certificate in Key Vault and flipped this over to HTTPS. But in any case, this is how you route to your specific path, what interval that you want to probe the health checks. So this is probing that path every 30 seconds. If there's a timeout, then it can send the traffic to other IPs within your backend pool. So it gives you a lot of the health checks built right in, which is another big advantage. I didn't have time to put a demo together here, but this is probably one of the best features of App Gateway is rewrite rules. You may have your users redirect to a different URL. So you can set up all your rewrite rules here. So I just have a basic rewrite rule here. Nothing fancy, but you can write more complex rewrite rules. Listeners. So listeners are just basically what port are you listening on for your backend pod. So that's about it. I know it's a lot of information, but I would highly recommend everyone to go through the GitHub link I posted, and it'll go through it step by step of how to set up AIGC. It'll walk you through the pros and cons of AIGC and Ingress Controller. And I hope this was helpful. I know we have 7 minutes for question and answer. Any questions? You guys still out there?
Yeah, we're here. It was very, very good session.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Is there a way
this
to-
feature? Sorry, go ahead.
Is there a way to force TLS 1.2 with App Gateway?
Force TLS 1.2 with App Gateway. I believe you can. I'll have to get back with you on that. Because the App Gateway has rules on the WAF, on what type of certificates are accepted. But I'll have to get you the answer on that. You want to basically force everyone to use TLS 1.2?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, give me your email address. Let me find out, and then I can email you. If you can just put it in the chat. Any other questions? Is this?
Go ahead. Yeah, so is this feature publicly available, or do we need a special link like for the preview access?
It's publicly available. It's in public preview right now.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
there's
okay.
no whitelisting or anything like that. So
Okay.
typically when we do these power lunches, we only show public preview features. Because if we show you private preview features, we could actually get in trouble because sometimes those private previews never make it to public preview. But anyway, when it's in public preview, you're pretty safe because it's actually going to make it to production. It's going to go GA at some point.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Hey Prithvi, I wanted to jump in here and clarify the public preview and GA thing.
Sure.
The App Gateway Ingress Controller deployed through Helm, like following our GitHub instructions. That has gone GA. It's been GA since last November, and deploying as an add-on through the as an AKS add-on is currently in public preview.
Got it. Good clarification, Kat.
Yeah, so we have customers using AGIC deployed through Helm in production since it's already gone GA.
Perfect. Yeah, so the demo that I showed you guys was using the add-on when creating your AKS cluster, but there is a way to do it with Helm, which, as Kat mentioned, has been GA for a while now. So there are 2 ways to deploy it.
I shared an article from Docs that says you can support disabling following protocol versions, TLS, that I shared. That might be of.
Perfect. Thanks for finding that, Aaron.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we can read through that and see if that is actually what you're looking for.
Cool. I know we have 4 minutes left. Any other questions? Hopefully this was helpful and you guys understood the differences between the traditional Ingress Controller and the App Gateway. And really the driving benefit is that you get the 50% network latency reduction because from an AKS perspective, it leverages advanced networking, and you get to ingress to your pods directly rather than having to go through that level of indirection of an ingress controller running on your pod, and then the pod redirecting to your application pods. So I think you'll see a significant performance improvement. So I was just curious if anybody's using Ingress Controller today with load balancer, and if anybody would be trying this out soon. Yeah, definitely go try it out if you haven't. Let us know your feedback and look forward to hearing about your performance improvements using this. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I know it's only a 30-minute session. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to reach out to me, Prithvi, myself, and then Kat, who's our program manager for Application Gateway. She can answer any of your deep dive technical questions that you have.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prithvi.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Great session. Thank you, Prithvi.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you.